Welcome back to Viewpoint. Tonight, continuing with our in-depth coverage of the COVID-19 public health emergency. We've heard from the Financial Secretary and the Chief Technical Officer in Part 1. And in the second half of tonight's programme, we're up at Windmill Hill to speak to the Captain of the Port Manuel Tirado.
The Port of Gibraltar has suffered a minor impact in comparison to other sectors of the economy. Luckily for us, we've been able to continue operation pretty much as normal, but putting some restrictions in place to ensure that we protect the local population and the crew of vessels at large. So although we've had to modify some of our protocols and introduce new protocols because of COVID-19, the port continues to be operational, and that's a good thing because we are assisting the economy.
Yeah, well, I mean, the port is always heralded as a very good source of income for Gibraltar, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you have an idea of, I know it's early days and it's only been a matter of weeks, but do you have an idea of what percentage might be impacted?
Well, I cannot give you a percentage so far because I haven't actually calculated that. But what I can say is that we've been looking at statistics, and if we compare this few months to last year, there hasn't been a dramatic drop in our business. We are pretty much doing more or less the same. In fact, I would say that we are slightly above what we did last year during the same period of time. The maritime industry is very buoyant, but it does fluctuate. So the fact that we're doing good this quarter, it's a good sign. But obviously we keep monitoring to ensure that if we see any drop in that, we can actually address that as soon as possible.
So what are the main sources of income for the port? Bunkering, crew changes?
Yeah. The Port of Gibraltar does offer all sorts of maritime services to vessels. Primarily we concentrate or we excel in the bunker industry. We are a bunker port as such, and the majority of vessels calling into Gibraltar will call for bunker operations. Linked to that, there are other services that take advantage of that call. But bunkering is, I would say, 90% of our operation day to day. So we generate revenue for government in the sense that all vessels calling into Gibraltar will pay port dues, berthing charges, and so on.
What risks are posed by bunkering operations that you've had to mitigate because of COVID-19?
Well, bunkering operation is an operation in itself that doesn't really pose any risks to the local population because it's done at anchorage and there is no contact with anybody from shore. But there are operators that must go on board to verify paperwork and so on, and they could themselves transmit any virus coming back to shore and take them to their houses. What we've done in this case is that we are limiting any contact with vessels, i.e. if they need to exchange any documentation, it is done electronically, and we try to limit any contact as much as possible for bunkering operation. There are other operations that are more close to the crew working on board, and again we've actually introduced protocols to ensure that the shore personnel working for that vessel does not go on board the ship to make sure that they keep that social distancing in order to mitigate against any potential threat. So those are things that
before they would have gone on board?
Absolutely. During a normal day-to-day operation without COVID-19, crew members would come ashore, liaise with people on the ground, and vice versa. They would have to go on board. I mean, provisions would be taken in by the crew, but in the same way, some people from shore would go on board to maybe sign documents and so on. Mm-hmm. This is something that we've eliminated. We've put a protocol in place to ensure that there is a barrier between people on board and people ashore. You may have seen on press releases that we do a large number of technical calls for cruise ships coming into Gibraltar, although there is no cruising at this moment in time worldwide, but the ships will need to get provisioned bunkers, water and so on, and unload garbage and waste. Again, we've gone as far as ensuring that there is no contact between people ashore and people on board, which tends to be a little bit difficult because there is a lot of people on board and they will want to come ashore even if it's going to Morrison's and do a little bit of shopping. That has been stopped. Obviously we're on lockdown and we don't allow people to loiter around the town, but particularly in this scenario we're not even allowing people to go ashore within the port estate. So that's one of the measures that we've introduced to mitigate.
Okay, and in respect of other services which are provided around bunkering, we mentioned crew changes, but there's also the supply of goods.
Yeah.
Is that largely continuing as per normal?
That's correct. We are continuing in pretty much as normal, as I've said, but we have protocols in place. But operations, when there is a request, we study that request for that operation. And we make sure that the supplier is fully aware of what he can do and he can't do. So provisions, for instance, we would allow provisions to go to ships, pretty much as normal. Provisions coming to a ship is completely independent to the provisions that we have for our local consumption, so that there is no impact in the sense that we've heard in some news that people are getting buying in large amounts and so on. This I have to stress that provisions coming to ships are specifically for ships and is completely separated to that coming for the local population. So there is no issue in that as long as they comply with our requirements.
You mean it's a different supply chain?
Absolutely,
okay.
Yes.
And you did stop crew changes temporarily, but those have now been restarted. Yeah. Can you explain what protocols are in place to manage the risks?
The reason for stopping crew changes is the fact that there was a little bit of uncertainty as to the flights coming in and out from Gibraltar. We now are very lucky that we have British Airways servicing us 4 times a week, I believe. And with that in mind, we've allowed crew changes, obviously with certain protocols in place. One of the requirements for ships are to remain within Gibraltar waters until that crew member has actually boarded the plane and the plane has left. That has been done to ensure that those crew members coming on shore are not left in Gibraltar with nowhere to go because the vessel has already left. Another thing is that there is a direct transfer from the port to the airport on the day of the flight, and there is no way that the crew members can loiter within Gibraltar before going to the airport. So we ensure that the transition from a ship to the airport is swiftly. That has been done in conjunction with civil contingency, and we've got a dirty vehicle identified for that. So we transfer crew members directly from the ship to the shore, and if there is any problem with the flight, any cancellation, any delay, the vessel will receive those crew members back on board so that they can stay on board and either stay in Gibraltar for a few days waiting for the next flight or depart to the next port of call. So what we are trying to do is minimize the amount of people that are in Gibraltar that are not from Gibraltar. Because they've been on other ports, they've been on ships, we are not sure whether they are contagious or not, so we make sure that transfer is...
checking in any way?
Absolutely. We check with the protocol that we've put in place, that we send vessel a questionnaire that they need to fill in, giving us information as to whether there has been any symptoms or what was the last port of call. Apart from that questionnaire, we also have a maritime declaration of health that they need to supply under the international regulations, and we scrutinize that declaration to ensure that the vessel is not hiding anything from us. Apart from those protocols in place, we also have a direct contact with the master of the vessel. We question the master to ensure again that the declaration that he submitted is up to date and there is no last minute scenario evolving on board the ship.
So all of that happens before a crew is allowed off the ship?
Absolutely. That happens before the ship actually before the ship gets into Gibraltar, and then we have a third filter in which the officer on duty will question the vessel to ensure that the declaration that is put in within the last 24 hours still remains valid and there are no changes to that. If we see any particular issue, then we cascade that directly to the Director of Public Health. We liaise directly with them and civil contingency, and we ensure that what we do is the right thing. And if we see any problem, then we'll stop that crew change of happening.
Okay, and you mentioned a dirty vehicle. That is to ensure that if it's used for crew members, it's not used for something else. Again, you don't think that they have COVID, but they could be
absolutely
asymptomatic. So
absolutely.
You'd make sure that vehicle is only used for crew changes.
The dirty vehicle is a term that we use for a specific vehicle that is used solely for transferring crew members to and from the port and the airport. The vehicle is sanitized every time there is a crew change, and there is a complete segregation from the driver to those people coming on that vehicle. But that is something that is handled by the civil contingency.
Okay, and working with the Civil Contingencies Office and also with Public Health Gibraltar, you're satisfied that those operations that you've been discussing are managing the risks associated with COVID-19 in the best way possible?
Absolutely. If I wasn't satisfied, then I would question as to why we are allowing this to happen if we are not completely satisfied. I think that the liaison between Director of Public Health, ministers and civil contingencies are very tight, and we discuss this on a daily basis. Wherever there is a request, even though I may have the freedom to accept that because the declaration and all the information given to us is correct, I still make sure that I cascade that up so that we're all in the loop. There is a reporting system that we've got in place that we report to civil contingencies as to what is happening within the next 48 hours. So if there is any planned crew changes for those period of time, I report directly to civil contingencies, so everybody within the essential services is aware of what's going on.
Okay. One of the silver linings of the past few weeks, the way that the pandemic has changed our lives, has been that air pollution seems to be down in a lot of places across the world and in Gibraltar as well. What would you say about any potential air pollution incidents or suspected air pollution incidents? We see some people posting photos or videos on social media of black smoke coming from a ship, perhaps taking a bunker in Gibraltar waters. What's the Port Authority? What is the Port Authority's protocol for dealing with that?
Well, I'm glad that the environment is doing better because of this scenario. At least there is a silver lining, like you say. The maritime industry has worked very hard to ensure that they comply with all the environmental requirements on board ships, and we vet those documentations. They are certified by the classification societies and their own flags. But we've got strict protocols in place to ensure that whenever there is any report coming to the port or the environmental agency, we work together with them, of any emissions being spotted within our waters, we will ensure that we investigate that case and call that master to attention and make sure that we verify that documentation is right. Usually there is emissions because there is a failure on the engine system, and obviously they can rectify that or not. If they can rectify that within a period of time, then that vessel is allowed to continue their voyage. If not, they will be stopped, they will be detained, and they will be asked to repair those deficiencies within Gibraltar. We work very closely with the Gibraltar Maritime Administration that conduct port state controls on board all ships. They would get that report of any emissions, and they would investigate themselves from that side. So for us, it's pretty much business as usual. Whatever we spot, we'll react accordingly. Yesterday,
we heard the Chief Secretary talk about the excellent work done by the public sector in responding to COVID-19, of which the Port Authority is a part, of course. And he talked about people having been flexible, but it'll be necessary, he says, to carry that flexibility forward and be able to do more for less in the coming months. What would your response be to that?
Well, as far as the Port Authority is concerned, I'm very happy with my staff. I think that my staff have demonstrated once again that they are very flexible and they jump to the occasion whenever there is the need to. I haven't had any problems with my staff in any of the sections that I command, and I would expect that that will continue moving forward.
He also talked about most of the public sector splitting up where possible into Team A, Team B, where more or less half the staff would work in the office at any one time and the other half at home if possible.
Yeah.
Is that how you have organized yourselves, and can you work efficiently remotely?
Absolutely. We are, at this moment in time, I think we are around 40-60% differential between people working at home and those people working in the office.
LNG is continuing to be supplied to the power station.
LNG is still coming into Gibraltar as per their schedule, and we've also introduced part of the protocols will cover people working from the shore side and the vessel in order to limit that contact from ship to shore. But yes, LNG will be continuing to come without a problem as long as the company continues to request coming on certain days. I believe LNG is requested by the electrical authorities, and they will demand when it's time to refuel the tanks. But pretty much in that sector is operational as normal.
Pleasure boats are allowed out. It's one of the reasons for which one could venture out, along with exercise and going to the supermarket and caring for vulnerable others. Have you seen any issues as the Port Authority in managing social distancing and any of the new regulations at sea?
Well, we've been very lucky that we haven't seen much of people accumulating in certain areas on their boats. People will be people, and they'll try to meet their friends and try to talk to them and so on. I think that the population of Gibraltar has been very responsible, and they are sticking to the regulations. I think with a few exceptions, the large majority are keeping to what the regulation states. They'll keep social distancing and so on. We patrol our waters like the RGP and customs on a daily basis, and I haven't had any report of the RGP, my crew, or customs telling us that people are accumulating in certain areas of the bay very close to each other. If we were to receive those reports, then we would target individuals personally, because I mean we know who they are, we know who their registrations are, and we can contact them directly. But I suspect that the RGP and the port launch crew and the customs will be doing vetting through our waters in the same way as they're doing on land. But I have to say that I haven't had any reports on that yet.
Okay, and almost 2 years in your new office up at Windmill Hill, with the visibility that this allows, albeit it's a slightly misty, cloudy day. How have you settled in? Are you happy with the new office?
Very, very happy. I think we are now settled in. I can safely say that we are settled in the building. It's taken us a little bit of time, and if you look around my office and some other office, you'll see some boxes lying about, still trying to go through it whenever we have some time. And COVID has given us that little bit of time, which is another silver lining that we can dedicate ourselves to ensuring that things go in the right place. But extremely happy, satisfied with the building. It's very operational. It does what it needs to do, and the view, as you mentioned, the vantage point that we have on all of our approaches, the eastern anchorage and the western anchorage, is second to none, and it's good to have an eye on what we do. So it's brilliant. I don't have any complaints.
Thanks a lot for watching. Viewpoint will continue to bring you in-depth coverage of the COVID-19 public health emergency every Thursday night. And of course, GBC Television will keep you up to date with our daily live coverage of the government's press conferences here at number 6 Convent Place every afternoon at 4 p.m. and also with our daily news updates on Newswatch at 8:30 and also at the weekend. Radio Gibraltar has news coverage at 8:30, 1:30 and 6:30 throughout the day. You can also check our website gbc.gi for the very latest. Thanks a lot for watching tonight. Bye for now.